Unless you're able to talk your way into a job, you're almost always going to have to go through an interview process. And to be quite honest with you, interviews can be nerve-wracking, they can be really challenging, and oftentimes they aren't always a great judge of the right candidate for the role. Now, you may find that very hard to believe, but really, what do you get to know about someone in 1 hour of their time? Now, the first and the opening interview is typically, how do we get this group of people through into the next round, which might require more interviews or testing and those types of things. But you really got 1 hour to prove yourself. So today we wanted to talk about some of the things that you can do to impress, but also some of the things you may be asked and how you can prepare to answer those things. The key, I suppose, in the first step is to make a really strong impression. In most interviews, your interviewers have already made up their mind about you within the first 5 to 10 minutes. It's really critical that you can build a little bit of rapport with the people who are about to interview you. So you need to think about how you can ask some questions to really grab their attention or make both them and you feel comfortable before this whole process kicks off. If you come in on a Monday morning, it's always great because you can ask about what did you guys get up to on the weekend and pretend to be really interested when they tell you about their kids' sport and whatnot. If it's later in the week, what do you guys got planned for the weekend, or what's going on within the business? Has it been a busy week? Try and show a level of interest within the business and also with the people you're interviewing with. And that's another tip. Try and figure out who it is that is interviewing you through this process. And you're well within your rights if you're invited in for an interview to say, hey, can you let me know who's going to be doing the interviewing, so you can do a little bit of research on them and probably more importantly, their career and how they got to where they are now. And ask some questions around that. You want to make sure you're on time. You want to make sure you're really polite and engaging to the person who greets you, whether it be at the door or at the front desk. You want to make sure you're really well presented. You want to make sure you've done your homework on the company. And that's research on their website, but also things that are happening in the press and the media around their business. Obviously, websites are going to tell you the story they want you to hear, but you want to make sure you know where their business is going and what they've been up to. Now, if there's recently been a scandal in the business, you probably don't want to flag that. But then again, you may not want to be working there if there's a scandal in the business. Once the interview starts, you're going to be asked some of the most horrible questions you're ever going to run into. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? There's such big, fluffy questions, and there really is no right answer. You want to try and spin everything you suggest into a positive for you, even if they ask you about a weakness. So what we're going to do is go through some of the most common and annoying questions that you'll be asked in an interview so that you can prepare answers and be ready to go. Now remember, you're able to walk into it, and in fact, we'd encourage you to take a notebook and a pen into an interview with you. And don't be afraid to have written down some questions and responses so that you can prepare yourself and you can provide thoughtful answers. There's nothing wrong with having pre-prepared material as you go into an interview. It actually makes it look like you've done a lot of thought and research. And don't be afraid to say, good question, and look up into the distance and ponder your response, collect your thoughts so you can give a strong answer. The worst thing you can do is just fire off the hip and provide long-winded and unhinged answers. So take your time and get it right. So let's run through 5 questions that you'll likely be asked in an interview and how you might answer those. Question number 1, tell me a little bit about yourself. Now, last thing you want to do is kick back and start telling your life story. You need to be concise. You need to talk about what it is that you've been studying or what you've been working on recently and how that's really started to shape you. Talk about your family, talk about the support, talk about the things you've got going in your life that make you an interesting candidate and someone that's worth having around the organisation. You really want to put some time and thought into this, because if you start rambling and you start telling about your auntie's husband who just found a treasure chest in their backyard, you might get a few chuckles, but people are like, I'm not going to be able to put up with this person. So have a really great elevator pitch about yourself ready to go. As part of that elevator pitch, make sure that you can effectively wrap up some of your previous work history. That doesn't have to be a full-time job. That can be volunteering, that can be an internship, that can be some of the other things you've done that show you're bringing a predetermined set of skills to this job that they won't have to teach you. Think about the sporting things you've achieved or the clubs you belong to or how you've worked in a team and how that's important to you. These are all things employers are looking to assess so that you're not a complete blank canvas when you start on day one. Question number 2, why should we hire you? That's such a broad question, and to be honest, they're looking for you to show a level of confidence, but also your ability to articulate what it is that you'll bring to the table. So make sure you've thought about some of your strengths and some of the things you do really well. If you're someone who's super organized, make sure you tell that story, because a lot of young people who haven't been in the work environment tend to need a little prodding to do bits and pieces to hit deadlines. So if you're really organized, talk about that's what you'll bring to the job and that's why you should be hired. If you're a great team player, if you fit in really well, make sure you can articulate how you've succeeded in a team. This is your opportunity to spin some of your strengths in a non-arrogant way, because this employer or these employers are looking for someone who can hit the ground running. Question number 3, tell me about a time when you encountered an obstacle and how did you overcome it? Employers love this one. You've got to be smart. Think about something that may have not gone to plan or that went wrong, how you took time to evaluate the situation and then tackled it again to get around that problem. A really interesting sort of example is talk about a customer service type interaction. So you're dealing with a customer who's unhappy with a product or something they got. You listen to their complaints or their challenges and you suggested these outcomes, and lo and behold, the customer left feeling even better about their interaction with you and the company. It shows that you can do or deal with problems, and it shows that in a level-headed way you're not going to kick your toys out of the cot and fall to pieces. You've thought through a problem and you've tackled it in a productive way. Question number 4, what motivates you? Once again, you need to spin this in a positive way that makes it look like you're really going to bring something to the table. So for example, an answer like, I'm motivated by team success, me working with other people to deliver an outcome that's favourable to the team or the organisation. It makes it look like you're a super team player who will always pull in the right direction, and that's what most organisations are after. There's very few jobs where you work on your own to punch out goals and targets. So sort of spinning something that makes it sound like you'll fit in seamlessly is the way to tackle that challenge. And finally, question 5, what are your salary requirements? This is one that trips up a lot of young players, and what I would encourage you to do is know your value. So you don't want to go in and say, oh, I don't know, I'll just be happy with whatever's fair, because of course most employers are going to pay you the least amount they possibly can. Do your homework, understand what the market rate is for an entry-level position, what the awards are, and make sure that you present something that's slightly above that. If you don't know what you're worth, you will be taken advantage of. So do your homework and confidently state, I'm looking for X. Now you can say, look, I've done my research and it indicates in this particular industry, a graduate salary starts in the $55,000 to $60,000 range. I would like something along the lines of $57,000 to $60,000. Now the employer might say, bugger that, we're going back to 55, but at least you're in the ballpark. The cool thing about signing up with Studium is that employers are able to find you and learn a lot about you based on your profile that helps overcome some of these awkward first interview questions. Sign up for Studium at www.studium.work.